The old transport shuttle coughed and wheezed as it dropped through the thin atmosphere of New Montana. Maya Rodriguez pressed her face against the small window and watched the red desert stretch out below her. Mountains rose like broken teeth from the dusty ground, and she could see the glint of metal where mining equipment worked the hillsides. The shuttle shook hard as it landed at the small spaceport outside Copper Ridge. Maya grabbed her worn duffel bag and pulled her hat low over her face. The scars that ran down the left side of her face from her temple to her jaw were old now, but they still drew stares. She had learned to keep her head down and move quickly through crowds. The spaceport was nothing more than a flat piece of ground, with a few buildings scattered around it. A sign hung crooked on the main building, the paint faded by years of sun and dust storms. Maya walked past the handful of other passengers without looking at them. Most were miners heading back to work after leave, their faces already resigned to another few months in the deep shafts. The town of Copper Ridge sat in a valley between two red hills. The main street was dirt, and wooden buildings lined both sides. Some had false fronts that made them look bigger than they really were. A saloon, a general store, a small clinic, and a few other businesses made up the heart of the settlement. Maya walked down the main street, aware of the eyes following her. A few children playing in the dust stopped to stare at her scars. Their mothers quickly called them inside. An old man sitting on the porch of the general store looked her up and down, then spat into the dirt. The saloon was called the Red Canyon, and it looked like every frontier bar Maya had ever seen. The doors swung open as she pushed through them, and the noise inside died down for a moment as people turned to look at the stranger. The bartender, a heavy man with graying hair, watched her approach the bar. "Looking for work," Maya said quietly, setting a few credits on the bar. "I can clean, serve drinks, whatever you need." The bartender studied her face for a long moment. "You been in fights before?" he asked. Maya touched the scars on her face without thinking. "Something like that." "Name's Pete," the bartender said. "I could use help in the evenings. Gets busy when the miners come down from the hills. You got a place to stay?" "Working on it." Pete nodded toward the back of the room. "Talk to Helen at the general store. She's got a room upstairs she rents. Out sometimes." Maya thanked him and left the saloon. The general store was run by a thin woman with sharp eyes and gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. Helen looked Maya over carefully, taking in the scars, the worn clothes, and the way she stood like she was ready to run or fight. "Pete sent you?" Helen asked. "Looking for a room. 20 credits a week. First week up front. No noise, no visitors, no trouble." Maya counted out the credits and handed them over. Helen gave her a key and pointed to a narrow staircase at the back of the store. The room was small but clean. A bed, a chair, a small table, and a window that looked out over the main street. Maya set her bag on the bed and sat down heavily. She pulled off her hat and ran her fingers through her dark hair. In the mirror across the room, she could see her reflection. The scars were pale against her tanned skin, a reminder of a life she was trying to forget. She had been on New Montana for less than 2 hours, and already she felt the familiar weight of being an outsider. People looked at her scars and made assumptions. They saw a woman who had been in trouble, who might bring trouble with her. They were not entirely wrong. That evening, Maya started work at the Red Canyon. The saloon filled up as the sun went down, and the miners came in from their shifts. They were tired men with dirty faces and strong hands, looking for drinks and company after long days in the dark tunnels. Maya served drinks and cleaned tables, staying quiet and keeping her head down. She listened to the conversations around her. The miners talked about their work, about the veins of rare metals they were pulling from the mountains. They talked about their families back on Earth or other worlds. And they talked about the aliens. "Saw more of those Zephyrian ships yesterday," one miner said to his friend. "Flying low over the eastern ranges." "What do you think they want?" his friend asked. "Same thing they always want. Our land, our metals, everything we got." Maya's hand tightened on the glass she was cleaning. She had heard about the Zephyrians on other worlds. They were traders and miners, but they were also known for taking what they wanted when trading did not work. "They've been making offers," another man said. Big money for mining rights. Some folks are tempted. Not me, the first miner said. My family died getting to this rock. I ain't selling to no aliens. As the night went on, Maya learned more about the town and its people. Most of the settlers had been there for 2 or 3 generations. Their grandparents had come from Earth looking for a new life, and they had found it in the hard red soil of New Montana. They raised cattle in the valleys and pulled metals from the mountains. It was not an easy life, but it was theirs. She also learned about the problems. Cattle had been disappearing from ranches. Water sources were drying up or becoming poisoned. Equipment was breaking down more often than it should, and strange lights were seen in the sky at night. Maya served the last customer just before midnight and began cleaning up the saloon. Pete counted the money from the register and seemed satisfied with the night's business. "You did good," he told her. "Same time tomorrow?" Maya nodded. As she walked back to her room through the empty streets, she looked up at the stars. New Montana had 2 small moons, and their light cast strange shadows on the buildings. Somewhere, up there, ships were watching and waiting. She had seen it before on other worlds. The pattern was always the same. She climbed the stairs to her room and locked the door behind her. From her bag, she pulled out a small device that looked like a broken communicator. She turned it over in her hands, thinking. Not yet. She was not ready yet. Maya lay on the narrow bed and stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow she would work again, listen again, learn again. She would become part of this place, just another face in the crowd, and maybe, if she was lucky, the past would leave her alone for a while longer. Outside her window, the desert wind howled between the buildings, carrying dust and secrets across the red landscape of New Montana. Maya had been working at the Red Canyon for 3 weeks when the fight started. It was a busy Saturday night, and the saloon was full of miners and ranchers blowing off steam after a hard week. The air was thick with smoke and the smell of cheap whiskey. 2 miners had been drinking since sunset, and their voices kept getting louder. They were arguing about money, about a card game from the night before. Maya tried to stay out of their way as she served drinks to other customers, but she could feel the tension building. "You cheated me, Danny," one of the miners said, standing up from his chair. His name was Carl, and he was bigger than most men in the room. "I want my money back." Danny was smaller but meaner. He had a scar across his knuckles and the look of a man who had been in many fights. "Prove it," he said, not bothering to stand up. Carl grabbed Danny by the shirt and pulled him to his feet. Other customers started moving away from their table. Pete, the bartender, reached under the bar where he kept a shotgun, but he was too slow. Danny pulled a knife from his belt and swung it at Carl's face. Carl jumped back, but the blade cut across his cheek. Blood ran down his face as he roared with anger and threw himself at Danny. They crashed into a table, sending glasses and bottles flying. Other men shouted and tried to get out of the way. Danny still had the knife, and he was trying to use it. Carl was bigger and stronger, but Danny was faster and more dangerous. Maya had been watching from across the room. She set down the tray of drinks she was carrying and moved toward the fight. She did not run or shout. She walked calmly through the chaos as if she had done this many times before. When she reached the 2 men, Danny was on top of Carl, trying to push the knife into his chest. Carl had both hands on Danny's wrist, fighting to keep the blade away from his body. Maya grabbed Danny's wrist and twisted it hard. There was a sharp crack, and Danny screamed as the knife fell from his broken wrist. She pulled him off Carl and threw him against the wall with surprising strength for someone her size. Danny hit the wall hard and slid to the floor, holding his broken wrist and moaning. Carl sat up, touching the cut on his face and staring at Maya in shock. "Fight's over," Maya said quietly. Her voice was calm, but there was something in it that made everyone in the room stay very still. Pete came out from behind the bar with his shotgun, but he did not need it anymore. Danny was hurt and Carl was bleeding but alive. The other customers started talking again, but quietly now. "Get him to the clinic," Maya told Pete, nodding at Carl. "That cut needs stitches." 2 men helped Carl to his feet and walked him out of the saloon. Other customers picked up the broken glass and set the table back on its legs. Danny got up slowly and left without saying anything, still holding his wrist. Maya went back to serving drinks as if nothing had happened. But now people looked at her differently. They had seen how fast she moved, how strong she was, how calm she stayed when other people panicked. They wondered where a woman learned to fight like that. Jake Sullivan had been sitting at a corner table when the fight started. He owned the biggest ranch in the territory, and he came to town once a week for supplies and news. He had watched Maya break up the fight with professional interest. He had been a soldier once, before he came home, to run the family ranch, and he recognized the way she moved. After the saloon emptied out, Jake walked up to the bar where Maya was cleaning glasses. "Buy you a cup of coffee?" he asked. Maya looked at him carefully. He was tall and lean with brown hair and steady blue eyes. His clothes were clean but worn, and his hands were calloused from ranch work. He did not look at her scars like most men did. He looked at her eyes instead. "Why?" she asked. "Because you handled that fight better than most lawmen I've seen, and because you look like you could use a friend." Maya considered this. She had been in Copper Ridge for 3 weeks, and Jake was the first person to talk to her like she was more than just a woman with a scarred face. "All right," she said. They sat at a table near the window. Pete brought them coffee and left them alone. Jake did not ask about the scars on her face, and Maya did not volunteer any information about where she had learned to fight. "I'm Jake Sullivan," he said. "I run the Bar S Ranch, about 10 miles south of town." "Maya," she said. She did not give her last name. "You're new to New Montana." "Yes." Jake waited for her to say more, but she did not. He was used to people who did not talk much. Ranch life taught you to be comfortable with silence. "What do you think of our little town?" he asked. Maya looked out the window at the empty street. "It's quiet, for now." "You think that's going to change?" "It always does." Jake studied her face. There was something in her voice, a kind of knowledge that came from seeing too much of the galaxy. "You've been to other frontier worlds." It was not a question, and Maya did not answer it like one. "A few." "What happened to them?" Maya was quiet for a long time. Outside, the wind was picking up, blowing dust down the main street. "Depends on who wanted them," she said finally. Jake understood. Every frontier world faced the same threats. Corporations, aliens, governments, pirates. They all wanted something, and they usually took it from people who could not fight back. "The Zephyrians have been making offers," he said. "I heard. Big. Money for mining rights. Some folks are tempted." Maya looked at him directly for the first time. "Are you?" Jake shook his head. "My grandfather died building this ranch. My father died defending it. I won't sell it to aliens who think humans don't belong here." Something changed in Maya's expression. For just a moment her guard dropped, and Jake saw pain and respect in her eyes. "That's good," she said quietly. "Hold on to that." They talked for another hour about small things, the weather, the cattle, the mines. Jake found himself relaxing around Maya in a way he had not expected. She was smart and observant, and she knew more about business and law than most ranch hands. When they were ready to leave, Jake walked her back to the general store. "Maybe we could have coffee again sometime," he said. Maya looked at him for a long moment. He was kind and honest, and she could see why people trusted him. But kindness was dangerous for someone like her. It made you want things you could not have, maybe, she said. Jake tipped his hat and walked away. Maya watched him go, then climbed the stairs to her small room. She sat on the bed and thought about blue eyes and calloused hands and the way he had looked at her like she was worth knowing. Outside, the wind howled across the desert, and somewhere in the distance, strange lights moved across the sky. Maya pulled the curtains closed and tried not to think about Jake Sullivan and the way he made her feel like she might have a reason to stay in one place for a while. The trouble started small, like it always did. Old Mrs. Parker found her well water tasted strange one morning. By evening, 3 of her cattle were dead. The vet from town said it looked like poison, but he could not figure out what kind. 2 days later, Jim Bradley's mining equipment broke down in the middle of a big job. The machines were new, but the control systems failed all at once. Jim lost a week of work and had to pay for expensive repairs. Then the Hendricks family just disappeared. Their ranch house stood empty with breakfast still on the table and clothes hanging on the line. Their neighbors found no sign of a struggle, no note, no trail leading away from the house. It was like they had simply vanished into the thin air of New Montana. Maya heard the stories at the Red Canyon every night. The miners and ranchers were scared, but they were also angry. They had worked too hard for too long to give up now. Jake came to town more often, sometimes twice a week instead of his usual once. He would sit at Maya's table after the saloon closed, and they would talk about the strange things happening around Copper Ridge. "It's not random," Maya said one night as they shared coffee and pie. "The well that got poisoned supplies the biggest ranch in the Eastern Valley. The mining equipment that broke belongs to the most successful independent operation. The family that disappeared owned land right over the richest metal deposits." Jake looked at her with surprise. "How do you know all that?" Maya realized she had said too much. She was supposed to be just a bartender who listened to stories. "People talk," she said quickly. "You hear things." But Jake was not fooled. He had been watching Maya for weeks now, and he knew she was more than she pretended to be. She knew too much about business, about law, about the way corporations worked. She moved like a soldier and thought like a general. "Maya," he said quietly, "who are you really?" Before she could answer, the saloon doors swung open. 3 figures walked in, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop. They were tall and thin with pale blue skin and large dark eyes. They wore expensive clothes that looked out of place in the rough frontier saloon, Zephyrians. The aliens looked around the room with obvious disgust. One of them, who wore more decorations than the others, stepped forward. "I am Ambassador Crix of the Zephyrian Mining Collective," he said in perfect English. His voice was cold and smooth like ice. "I wish to speak with the local leaders about a business opportunity." The few customers in the saloon stared at the aliens with a mixture of fear and anger. Pete the bartender reached for his shotgun, but one look from Ambassador Crix made him freeze. "We know that humans have been experiencing difficulties recently," Crix continued. "Equipment failures, contaminated water, missing persons. These problems will only get worse unless you accept our generous offers for your land." Jake stood up slowly. Maya grabbed his arm, but he shook her off. "Get out," Jake said. His voice was quiet but deadly serious. Ambassador Crix turned his large, dark eyes on Jake. "You must be Jake Sullivan. We have heard much about you. The stubborn rancher who refuses to see reason." "I see fine," Jake said. "I see aliens threatening innocent people to steal their land." "We are not stealing anything," Crix said. "We are offering fair payment for property that humans cannot properly develop. Your primitive methods are wasteful. We can extract 10 times more resources with our advanced technology. And what happens to us? You will be relocated to other worlds more suitable for human habitation. Worlds without the dangerous conditions that have been causing so many accidents lately." The threat was clear. Maya felt something cold and familiar settle in her stomach. She had seen this before on other worlds. The pattern was always the same. First came the offers, then the accidents, then the disappearances. Finally came the warships and the end of human resistance. "We're not selling," Jake said firmly. "Not to you, not to anybody." Ambassador Crix smiled, showing sharp white teeth. "That is unfortunate. Accidents have a way of becoming more frequent when people are unreasonable." He turned to leave, followed by his 2 companions. At the door, he paused and looked back at the room. His eyes found Maya, and for a moment, something like recognition flickered across his face. "Be careful, humans," he said. "New Montana is a dangerous world for those who do not know how to protect themselves." After the aliens left, the saloon was quiet for a long time. Finally, Pete put away his shotgun and poured himself a drink with shaking hands. "We need to do something," Jake said. "We can't just wait for them to pick us off one by one." "What can we do?" asked one of the miners. "They've got ships and weapons and who knows what else. We've got rifles and determination." Maya stood up suddenly. "You need to organize," she said. "All of you. Every rancher, every miner, every family. You need to work together. Organize how? Jake asked. Maya was quiet for a moment, thinking. She knew things about corporate law, about interstellar treaties, about the legal tricks that aliens use to steal human worlds. But she was supposed to be just a bartender. There are laws, she said carefully. Galactic laws about how corporations can acquire territory. They have to follow proper procedures, file the right documents, prove their claims are legitimate. How do you know about galactic law? Pete asked. I read, Maya said. And I listen. If you can prove they're using illegal methods, you can file complaints with the colonial authority. You can demand investigations. Jake was staring at her again. What kind of complaints? Maya felt trapped. Every word she said revealed more about her past, but these people needed help. Harassment, intimidation, sabotage, kidnapping, all of those things are illegal under colonial law, even for alien corporations. And what if the colonial authority doesn't care? A miner asked. Then you make them care, Maya said. You document everything. You gather evidence. You make sure the whole galaxy knows what's happening on New Montana. Over the next hour, Maya found herself leading an impromptu strategy session. She suggested ways to protect water supplies, how to secure mining equipment, how to set up communication networks between ranches. She talked about legal procedures and corporate structures with an expertise that no bartender should possess. Jake listened to everything, his eyes never leaving Maya's face. When the meeting finally ended and the other people left, he stayed behind. All right, he said, time for the truth. Who are you? Maya looked at him for a long moment. She cared about this man more than she wanted to admit. She cared about this town and these people. But caring was dangerous. It made you vulnerable. I'm someone who's seen this before, she said finally. Where? Other worlds, other fights, some we won, some we lost. What happened to the ones you lost? Maya touched the scars on her face. They became corporate property. The people who wouldn't sell were relocated or disappeared. The ones who fought back died. Jake reached across the table and took her hand. His was warm and strong and honest. That's not going to happen here. How can you be sure? Because we're not alone. We've got each other and we've got you. Maya pulled her hand away. I can't stay, Jake. When this is over, I have to move on. That's what I do. Maybe this time will be different. Maya stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the desert wind was blowing, and strange lights moved across the sky. Zephyrian, ships watching and waiting. Maybe, she said quietly, but she did not believe it. The attack came at 3 a.m. when the desert was cold and dark. Maya woke to the sound of explosions in the distance. She grabbed her clothes and ran to the window. Orange flames lit up the southern sky where Jake's ranch was located. She was dressed and running down the stairs before she fully understood what she was doing. Helen called out from her room, asking what was happening, but Maya did not stop to answer. She ran through the empty streets toward the livery stable where she kept a horse she had bought the week before. The ride to Jake's ranch took 20 minutes across rough ground in the darkness. Maya pushed the horse hard, following the glow of the fire. As she got closer, she could hear gunshots and the high whine of alien energy weapons. Jake's ranch house was burning, but it was still standing. The barn was completely destroyed, and several outbuildings were on fire. Dark shapes moved around the property, too tall and thin to be human. Maya left her horse tied to a fence post and moved closer on foot. She had no weapons except a small knife she carried, but she knew how to move without being seen. She had learned that skill in another life, in another war. Jake was behind an overturned wagon, firing a rifle at the attackers. 2 of his ranch hands were with him, but one was bleeding from a wound in his shoulder. The Zephyrians had them pinned down with superior firepower. Maya counted 6 aliens spread around the ranch yard. They were wearing dark armor and carrying weapons that fired bolts of blue energy. They moved with military precision, taking turns, advancing while others provided cover. She could hear them talking to each other in their own language, but she also heard something else. One of them was speaking English into a communication device. Resistance is minimal, the alien said. The target is cornered. We will complete the mission and withdraw. Target. They were not here just to destroy property. They were here to kill Jake. Maya made her decision. She circled around behind the burning barn, using the smoke and shadows to hide her movement. The aliens were focused on Jake and his men. They did not expect an attack from behind. The nearest alien was crouched behind a water trough, firing at Jake's position. Maya came up behind him silently and grabbed his weapon. She twisted it out of his hands and struck him in the head with the stock. He dropped without making a sound. Now she had a real weapon. The alien energy rifle was heavier than she expected, but she remembered how to use similar weapons from her military days. She checked the power level and found it nearly full. Maya moved to the next alien who was advancing toward Jake's position. She waited until he was exposed, then fired. The blue energy bolt caught him in the chest, and he fell backward, his armor smoking. The other aliens realized they were under attack. From behind, they turned to face this new threat, which gave Jake and his men a chance to advance from their cover. The fight became a running battle through the ranch yard. Maya moved from building to building, using her knowledge of military tactics to outflank the aliens. Jake and his men pressed forward, their rifles cracking in the night air. 2 more aliens fell to Maya's precise shooting. The remaining 2 retreated toward a small aircraft that had landed behind the house. But as they ran, one of them got a clear shot at Jake. Maya saw the alien raise his weapon and aim at Jake's back. Without thinking, she threw herself between them. The energy bolt meant for Jake caught her in the side, spinning her around and dropping her to the ground. Jake spun around and saw Maya fall. His face twisted with rage, and he charged the alien who had shot her. The alien tried to bring his weapon around, but Jake was too close. Jake's rifle butt caught the alien in the face, crushing his skull. The last alien reached his aircraft and took off into the night sky. Jake let him go. He was already kneeling beside Maya, checking her wound. The energy bolt had burned through her shirt and left a long, shallow burn across her ribs. It was painful but not fatal. Maya tried to sit up, and Jake helped her. "You saved my life," he said. "You would have done the same." Jake looked at the alien weapon in her hands, then at the bodies scattered around his ranch yard. "Where did you learn to fight like that?" Maya looked at the destruction around them. The fires were starting to die down, but the damage was severe. Jake's barn was gone, several buildings were destroyed, and his cattle were scattered across the desert. "I need to tell you something," she said. They went into the ranch house, which had suffered damage but was still livable. Jake's 2 ranch hands stayed outside to watch for more attacks. Jake cleaned Maya's wound and bandaged it while she talked. "My name is Maya Rodriguez," she began. "I used to be Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez of the Earth Colonial Fleet." Jake's hands stopped, moving as he processed this information. "Used to be? I was court-martialed 5 years ago, stripped of rank and discharged in disgrace. What did you do?" Maya was quiet for a long time. Outside, she could hear Jake's men putting out the last of the fires. "There was a battle at Kepler Station. Pirates were attacking a civilian transport. My orders were to wait for reinforcements, but waiting would have meant letting innocent people die. So you attacked anyway. I saved 800 lives, but I also disobeyed direct orders and lost 3 ships in the process. The military decided I was reckless and dangerous." Jake finished bandaging her wound and sat back. "Were you? Maybe. But those 800 people are still alive because of what I did. So you've been drifting from world to world ever since?" "Yes. I can't go back to civilized space. Too many people know my face, know my story. So I go to frontier worlds where nobody asks questions." Jake was quiet for a while, thinking about everything she had told him. Finally, he asked, "Is Rodriguez your real name?" Maya hesitated. "Yes." "Are you running from something besides your past?" "What do you mean?" "The way that alien looked at you in the saloon, like he recognized you. And tonight, the way you knew exactly how to use their weapons, how to fight them. That wasn't just military training. That was specific knowledge." Maya realized she had revealed too much again. In the heat of battle, she had used skills and knowledge that went far beyond what a disgraced officer should possess. She had fought Zephyrians before, knew their tactics, knew their weaknesses. There are things I can't tell you, she said finally. Can't, or won't. Both. Jake stood up and walked to the window. Dawn was breaking over the desert, painting the sky pink and gold. His ranch was half destroyed, but he and his men were alive. That was something. The alien who got away will report back, he said. They'll know you were here. They'll know you helped fight them off. Yes. Will they come back? Yes, but not right away. They'll want to know who I am first. They'll want to understand what they're dealing with. Jake turned back to her. And what are they dealing with, Maya? Maya met his eyes. In them, she saw trust and caring, and something deeper that scared her more than any alien weapon. Someone who's tired of running, she said quietly. Outside, the sun rose over New Montana, and somewhere in the distance, alien ships were already carrying word of the night's battle back to their commanders. The war for New Montana had begun, and Maya Rodriguez was no longer just a drifter with a scarred face. She was a soldier again, whether she wanted to be or not. 3 days after the attack on Jake's ranch, the sky above New Montana filled with alien warships. They appeared without warning, dropping out of hyperspace like dark clouds gathering for a storm. The ships were massive, each one bigger than the entire town of Copper Ridge. Maya stood outside the Red Canyon Saloon watching the ships take position in orbit. She counted 12 heavy cruisers and at least 20 smaller vessels. It was an invasion force, not a mining expedition. The people of Copper Ridge gathered in the street, pointing at the sky and talking in frightened voices. Some talked about surrendering. Others spoke of fighting to the end. Most just stood there in shock, unable to believe this was really happening. Jake rode into town with a group of ranchers and miners. They had been organizing the defense of the territory, setting up communication networks and supply lines. But looking at the alien fleet above them, their preparations seemed useless. How long do we have? Jake asked Maya when he found her. Not long. Maybe hours. Ambassador Crix's voice suddenly echoed across the town from speakers on the alien ships. People of New Montana, he said, his cold voice carrying clearly in the thin air. You have until sunset to evacuate this world. Any humans remaining after that time will be considered hostile and dealt with accordingly. That's it then, said Pete from behind them. We're finished. Maya looked at the faces around her. These people had worked so hard to build something here. They had raised families, built homes, created a community. Now they were being told to abandon it all because aliens wanted their resources. She thought about 800 civilians on a transport ship 5 years ago. She had broken the rules to save them, and it had cost her everything. But they were still alive somewhere in the galaxy because she had made that choice. No, she said quietly. What? Jake asked. No, Maya said louder. This is not over. She walked back into the saloon and went up to her room. From her worn duffel bag, she pulled out the device that looked like a broken communicator. It was not broken. It was the most advanced communication system in human space, capable of reaching any colonial fleet vessel in the galaxy. Maya had carried it for 5 years without using it. Using it would reveal her location to people who might want to arrest her. But looking out her window at the alien ships and the frightened faces of her neighbors, she realized she had no choice. She activated the device and sent a priority signal, using codes that only the highest levels of colonial command would recognize. The signal would take several minutes to reach the nearest fleet relay station, but once it did, every ship in the sector would receive it. Jake found her sitting on her bed, holding the strange device. What is that? He asked. A way to call for help? From who? The colonial fleet won't come all the way out here for one frontier world. Maya looked at him with sadness in her eyes. There's more I haven't told you. Before she could explain, the device in her hands began to beep. Someone was answering her signal. Maya activated the holographic projector, and suddenly the small room was filled with the image of a man in a colonial fleet uniform. He was older than Maya, with gray hair and stern features. His uniform bore the insignia of an admiral, but what shocked Jake was how much the man looked like Maya. The same dark eyes, the same strong jaw, the same determined expression. "Maya," the Admiral said, relief clear in his voice. "We've been worried about you." "Hello, Father." Jake felt like the ground had dropped out from under him. Maya's father was an admiral in the colonial fleet. "Are you safe?" the Admiral asked. "For now. But there's a Zephyrian invasion fleet in orbit. 12 heavy cruisers and support vessels. They're demanding evacuation of all human settlements." The Admiral's expression hardened. "Send me the coordinates. I'll have the Third Fleet there within 6 hours." "Father, wait. There's something else you need to know." Maya took a deep breath and looked at Jake. "My name is not just Maya Rodriguez. It's Maya Elena Rodriguez. My father is Admiral Carlos Rodriguez, and I'm the primary heir to the Rodriguez Colonial Trust." Jake stared at her in shock. Everyone in human space knew about the Rodriguez Colonial Trust. It was one of the largest financial empires in the galaxy, controlling shipping, mining, and colonial development across dozens of star systems. "The trust owns legal title to 43% of New Montana," Maya continued, "including all major mining rights and water sources." The Admiral nodded, "Which means any attack on New Montana is an attack on trust property, and by extension, an act of war against Earth." Jake's mind was reeling. The woman he had fallen in love with was one of the most powerful people in human space. She owned almost half the planet he had spent his life on. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked. Maya looked at him with pain in her eyes. "Because I wanted you to care about me, not my money or my family name." The Admiral was studying Jake through the holographic display. "And you are?" "Jake Sullivan, sir. I run a ranch here." "The man my daughter has been protecting?" "I didn't." "No, she was protecting me. I thought she was just a drifter." The Admiral smiled slightly. "My daughter has been investigating alien corporate interference in human colonies for 5 years. Her court-martial and exile were carefully planned. We needed someone the aliens wouldn't suspect to gather intelligence, so she's still in the military. She's been working undercover for colonial intelligence. The scars on her face are real, from the Battle of Kepler Station, but her disgrace was theater." Maya stood up and walked to the window. 47 worlds. "Jake, I've been to 47 worlds where aliens use the same tactics they're using here. Legal pressure, sabotage, intimidation, disappearances. Most of those worlds are gone now, their human populations relocated or worse. But not all of them, not all. Some we saved, some fought back successfully. That's why I came to New Montana. The pattern was starting here and I wanted to stop it." Jake joined her at the window. Above them, the alien ships hung in the sky like a promise of destruction. "And now? Now it's not just about New Montana anymore. The Zephyrians have made this personal by attacking trust property. They've given us legal grounds for a military response." The Admiral's voice came from the communicator. "Maya, I need you to formally claim your inheritance and activate trust security protocols." Maya hesitated. "If I do that, there's no going back. No more hiding. No more pretending to be someone else. The galaxy needs to know who you are," her father said gently. "And more importantly, the people of New Montana need to know they're not alone." Maya took Jake's hand. "I'm sorry I lied to you." "You didn't lie. You just didn't tell me everything. Are you angry?" Jake looked at her, really looked at her. The scars on her face, the strength in her eyes, the way she had fought to protect his ranch and his people. "I fell in love with a drifter who served drinks and fought off bullies. Finding out she's also one of the most powerful women in the galaxy doesn't change that." Maya activated the trust protocols through her communicator. Immediately, signals began broadcasting from hidden transmitters across New Montana, declaring the planet under trust protection and warning any hostile forces to withdraw immediately. In Dointuan orbit, the Zephyrian ships received the signals and suddenly realized what they were facing. Ambassador Crix appeared on the main communication channel, his voice no longer cold and confident. "Rodriguez," he said. "We did not know." "Now you do," Maya replied. "You have 1 hour to withdraw from New Montana space before the colonial fleet arrives. This is not over. Yes, it is. The first Zephyrian ships were already moving away from the planet. Within minutes, the entire fleet was retreating toward the edge of the system. They would not risk a war with Earth over one frontier world, especially when that world belonged to the Rodriguez family. Jake squeezed Maya's hand. So what happens now? Now we wait for my father's ships to arrive, and then we rebuild your ranch. Our ranch, Jake corrected. Maya smiled, and for the first time since he had known her, she looked truly happy. Our ranch. 6 hours later, the third fleet dropped out of hyperspace above New Montana. 27 Earth colonial ships appeared in formation, their hulls gleaming silver against the red planet below. Admiral Carlos Rodriguez himself led the fleet aboard, the flagship Endeavor. The Zephyrian ships had retreated to the edge of the system but had not left completely. They waited there like vultures, hoping the humans would make some mistake that would give them another chance at New Montana's resources. Maya stood in the main square of Copper Ridge, watching her father's shuttle land. The entire town had gathered to see the arrival of one of the most famous military leaders in human space. Children pointed at the sky in wonder, and their parents talked in hushed voices about what this meant for their future. Jake stood beside Maya, still trying to understand how much his world had changed in a single day. The woman he loved was not just wealthy beyond imagination. She was at the center of humanity's expansion into the galaxy. Admiral Rodriguez stepped off his shuttle wearing full dress uniform. He was a tall man with silver hair and the bearing of someone who had commanded fleets in dozens of battles. But when he saw Maya, his stern expression softened into a smile. "My daughter," he said, embracing her carefully because of her bandaged wound. "Father." The Admiral looked at the scars on her face, still painful to see even after 5 years. "How do you feel?" "Like myself again." Admiral Rodriguez turned to Jake and extended his hand. "Mr. Sullivan, thank you for taking care of my daughter." "She took care of herself, sir, and all of us." "That sounds like Maya." Pete, the bartender, stepped forward nervously. "Admiral, sir, we're honored to have you here. But what happens to us now? Are we still going to lose our homes?" Admiral Rodriguez looked around at the gathered townspeople. These were the kind of people who had built humanity's empire among the stars. Farmers and miners and shop owners who were willing to risk everything for a chance at a better life. "No one is losing their homes," he said firmly. "New Montana is under Earth protection now. Any corporation or government that wants access to this world will have to deal with the Colonial Trust and the Colonial Fleet." An old woman in the crowd called out, "What about our land rights? If Miss Maya owns half the planet, what happens to our ranches and mines?" Maya stepped forward. "Nothing changes for people who are already here. Your land grants are valid, and they'll stay valid. The trust holdings are mostly unused territory and mineral rights that were never claimed." "But you could change your mind," someone else said. "Rich people always do." Maya understood their fear. They had spent their lives working for what little they had, and now they found out someone else held the real power on their world. "I could," she said honestly, "but I won't. And I'll put that promise in writing, legally binding, witnessed by my father, and filed with the Colonial Authority." Jake looked at her with pride. She could have used her power to control these people, but instead she was choosing to protect them. Over the next few days, Maya worked with her father and the Colonial Authority to establish New Montana as the headquarters of a new organization called the Colonial Protection Agency. Its mission would be to defend human settlements from corporate interference and alien pressure. 47 worlds, Maya explained to Jake as they walked through the ruins of his ranch. 47 worlds where I watched aliens steal everything humans had built. I won't let it happen anymore. But why here? Why make New Montana the headquarters? You could run this from Earth or any major world. Maya stopped walking and looked at the burned remains of his barn. Because this is where I remembered who I was. This is where I stopped running from my past and started fighting for something again. Jake understood. New Montana had changed Maya just as much as she had changed it. They were married 3 months later in the main square of Copper Ridge. The wedding was unlike anything the frontier town had ever seen. Admiral Rodriguez walked Maya down the aisle, and representatives from dozens of colonial worlds attended the ceremony, but Maya insisted on keeping it simple, just like any other frontier wedding. She wore a white dress that Helen from the general store had helped her choose, and Jake wore his best suit with his grandfather's silver belt buckle. The scars on Maya's face had faded some, but she made no effort to hide them. They were part of her story, part of who she had become. Pete officiated the ceremony, having been appointed as a justice of the peace for the occasion. "Do you, Jake? Sullivan, take Maya Elena Rodriguez to be your wife, knowing that she comes with more baggage than most frontier pack animals?" Jake laughed along with everyone else. "I do. And do you, Maya Elena Rodriguez, take Jake Sullivan to be your husband, knowing that he's stubborn enough to argue with an admiral's daughter?" "I do." The reception was held in the rebuilt Red Canyon Saloon. Maya danced with her father, with Jake, and with every man in town who was brave enough to ask. Jake danced with the wives and daughters of ranchers and miners, all of them telling him how lucky he was. As the evening wound down, Maya and Jake stood outside the saloon, looking up at the stars. Two of her father's ships were visible as moving, lights against the darkness patrolling the system to make sure the Zephyrians kept their distance. "Any regrets?" Jake asked. "About what?" "Giving up the quiet life. You could have stayed hidden forever." Maya considered this. "I thought I wanted to disappear. For 5 years I convinced myself that being anonymous was freedom. But it wasn't freedom. It was just another kind of prison. And now? Now I have work to do. Worlds to protect, people to defend. It won't be easy or quiet." Jake put his arm around her. "Good thing you married a stubborn rancher. Is that what you are? Among other things, I'm also the husband of the most powerful woman in the galaxy, which means I'll probably spend a lot of time explaining to people that I fell in love with her before I knew about the money." Maya laughed. "Will they believe you?" "The smart ones will. The dumb ones don't matter." 6 months later, the first Colonial Protection Agency station was completed on a hill overlooking Copper Ridge. It was designed to look like a frontier fort, fitting in with the landscape and the culture of New Montana. But inside, it contained communication equipment that could reach any human world in the galaxy, and defensive systems that could protect the entire planet. Maya ran the agency from an office that looked out over Jake's rebuilt ranch. Their cattle grazed in pastures that were now among the most secure locations in human space. Alien ships still passed through the system sometimes, but they kept their distance and followed all the proper protocols. Jake expanded his ranching operation, supplying food to the agency personnel and the growing number of visitors who came to New Montana. He also served as an unofficial ambassador to other frontier worlds, helping Maya understand the needs and concerns of people who lived on the edge of human space. They had found something neither of them had expected when Maya first arrived in Copper Ridge. Maya had found a home where she could use her power to protect people instead of serving political interests. Jake had found a partner who shared his belief that ordinary people deserved to be defended. And on clear nights when they stood together on their porch and looked up at the stars, they knew that somewhere out there, other worlds were safer because a drifter with a scarred face had decided to stop running and start fighting back.